Okay, I understand. Here's the translation of the provided text. Movie star posts late at night. How could my enormous nephew just vanish during a walk? I was screenshotting it to send to my manager, Curly, when suddenly there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find the stray cat I usually feed, with the kid from the movie star's photo sitting beside it. Human, do you like little people? 1. During breaks from filming, I often feed the stray cats in my neighborhood. There's this beautiful tabby cat with a huge belly. It meows at me when it sees me. Before eating, it always rubs against my legs and meows a couple of times to say thank you. It's very polite. After feeding it for a while, it recognized my home and often brought little trinkets to my doorstep. At first, it was dead mice and sparrows, which scared me a few times. Later, it turned into pretty leaves and small flowers. I couldn't help but take pictures and post them online. Who's getting flowers delivered by the cat night every day? Oh, it's me. My fans all praised me for being beautiful and kind-hearted, saying the cat was good, and I was good too. Even movie star Xavier sure actually commented. Human, as long as you like them. Suddenly, everyone in the comments section started shipping us. OMG. The icy Xavier is actually playing along with the meme. This has to be true love. The niche CP I've been shipping is finally coming true. I started shipping them the moment they brushed past each other years ago. Shelly Yunmian is the most sought-after sister-in-law in the entertainment industry. Xavier, you have good taste. My manager, Tess, also called to grill me about my relationship with Xavier. I racked my brain, but all I could remember was walking past his seat at an awards ceremony and saying, "Excuse me. Could Xavier have a crush on you?" No way. I've only been in the industry for 3 years, and I have absolutely no contact with him. I rubbed my forehead and opened Xavier's manager's WeChat, thinking about how best to phrase things. After all, if a gossip blog caught wind of this and embellished it, we'd never be able to clear things up. I hadn't even typed 2 words when my phone started vibrating. I answered the phone, and a man's deep voice with a hint of embarrassment came through. Shelly Yunmian, I'm sorry, that comment was mistakenly posted by my nephew. 2. After discussing it with Xavier, we jointly issued a statement on Weibo. The official statement politely clarified the misunderstanding and expressed hope for a future collaboration. Even though it was a misunderstanding, I couldn't help but roll around on my bed in happiness when I saw that Xavier had followed me and added me on WeChat. There was another rustling sound outside the door. I grabbed some cat food and opened the door. The pregnant tabby cat, April, stared at me with big eyes and meowed softly. April, you don't have to go to the trouble of climbing the stairs to bring me things. You're about to give birth, you need to rest. I poured cat food while talking to myself. April habitually rubbed against my legs first, and when she heard my words, she meowed with some dissatisfaction. She nudged today's gift toward me with her paw, a dried-up butterfly. I carefully picked up the butterfly, rubbed April's head, and thanked her. Only then did she purr contentedly and start eating the cat food. April, why don't you just come live with me? It's dangerous for you to be running around outside with that big belly. I touched her increasingly large belly, feeling a little worried. April ignored me, finished the cat food, washed her face with her paws, and shook herself, ready to leave. I forcibly carried her back home, but she just circled around the door, meowing to go out. Human, I have a family, I'll come see you next time. Just as I opened the door to let her out, a gentle voice suddenly sounded in my ear. Looking down, April was rubbing the door with her tail, meowing. I must be hallucinating from staying up too late. I shook my head and laughed, saying goodbye to April. 3. A new drama started filming, and after asking my assistant to help me feed April every day, I hurriedly joined the crew. This time, it was a small guest role, and I didn't have many scenes. After filming each day, I wandered around, feeding the stray cats on set. Strangely, I could always hear strange voices in my ears. Goldie, you're already so fat, and you're still eating. Bessie, you're acting crazy again, hurry up and leave. Be careful of humans. Someone poisoned me last month, and when I woke up, I couldn't chase after Bella anymore, boo-hoo. On the day of the wrap party, I went to feed the cats one last time. I was staring down at the cats, who were meowing and eating cat food, in a daze when someone patted me. Turning around, it was actually Xavier. He seemed to be filming a historical drama, with his long hair loose and most of his chest exposed, with some light sweat glistening on his prominent pectoral muscles. Unlike the aloof male god everyone talked about online, he was more like a fox spirit. Perhaps my gaze was too intense. Xavier awkwardly adjusted his collar and squatted down to pet the cats with me. I came back to my senses, my face a little hot, and I lowered my head to greet him. Xavier responded gently, his ears seeming to turn a little red. He skillfully took out disposable gloves from his pocket and gently stroked the little cat. Are you allergic to cat fur? No, it's because there's a two-faced jealous pot at home. He seemed to think of someone, the corners of his mouth turning up, his eyebrows curving, his starry eyes brewing a shallow smile, melting the sharp aura around him. Ah, the male god has someone. I was so overwhelmed by this big news that I didn't even know how I got home. When I picked up my phone to gossip with Tess, there was a sound at the door again. I opened the door, and April was elegantly licking her paws, carrying a beautiful calico kitten in her mouth. Human, this is my prettiest baby. 4. I stared blankly at April, who was squinting her eyes and holding her head high, waiting for me to pet her. What was going on? Could I really hear cats talking? April? Is that April talking? Human, don't be so surprised. April wagged her tail and carried the kitten into my house. The calico kitten seemed to have just been weaned, but she wasn't afraid of people, and she immediately rubbed against my legs, purring. Human, I've already taught her well, you're her mother now. April's tail was circling around my legs. I came back to my senses from the shock, picked up the calico kitten, and she just meowed sweetly. Human, the baby is too young to talk yet. Seeming to see what I was thinking, April answered while licking her paws. I was going to have a cat. And I could talk to cats. I picked up April and gave her a big hug. She pushed my face away with her paws, resisting a little. Human, don't scare people. After calming down, I suddenly remembered that I had 2 dramas to film in the second half of the year, and I probably wouldn't have much time at home. Looking at the adorable kitten, I could only give up with tears in my eyes. Boo-hoo, April, I really want to raise your kitten, but I have too much work this year, and no one can take care of her. April blankly looked up at me, then silently carried the kitten away. I chased after her, wanting to explain, but she ran too fast and disappeared in a flash. Oh no, I made the cat angry. I helplessly posted for help. The cat got angry after I rejected her kitten. How can I make it up to her? My fans gave me ideas. Bribe her with canned food. Cats don't hold grudges. Don't worry, Shelley, darling. Next time you see the cat, explain to her nicely and kiss her. Xavier also commented, succinctly. Good human, the cat isn't angry. The CP fans started a long thread in this layer again, and I inexplicably remembered Xavier's exposed chest that day, and suddenly my face felt a little hot. Male beauty is misleading, ah. I rushed to the bathroom to wash my face, and when I looked at my phone again, I found that Xavier was trending. It wouldn't be because of commenting on my post again. I hurriedly clicked in and found that he had posted a photo with a 3-year-old child. How could my enormous nephew just vanish during a walk? Some people suggested he call the police, some guessed it was his son, and others thought Xavier had been hacked. I was about to take a screenshot and send it to my manager to discuss when there was a knock on the door. I opened the door, and April was elegantly licking her paws, with the kid from the movie star's photo sitting beside her. Human, if you don't like kittens, do you like little people? 5. The child was about 3 years old, fair and chubby, but when he saw me, his mouth turned down, and he looked like he was about to cry. April swept her tail across his face and meowed impatiently. Don't cry, this is your new mommy. April's fluffy tail attracted his attention, and he stopped crying and smiled, but then corrected her seriously. I have a mommy. As he said that, he sneezed loudly. I frantically carried him into the house and found a cheese stick to put in his hand. The culprit, April, was slowly rolling around on the ground, very happy. I opened Xavier's contact, my hand hesitating above it. How should I say this? Your nephew was sent to me as a gift by a cat? I looked at the little boy, who was blinking his round eyes, the curve of his mouth very similar to Xavier's. Could he really be his son? The child suddenly spoke. Auntie, I'm hungry. I'll go find you something to eat. I subconsciously agreed and turned around, only then realizing. What, auntie? April jumped to my feet, purring and licking her fur. Human, I've already taught him, you're his auntie now. Looking at the proud expression on April's face, I couldn't bear to discourage her, so I just hummed and nodded. Hiding in the kitchen, I gritted my teeth and dialed Xavier's number. Hello, teacher. Sure, your nephew seems to be at my house. There were a few silent seconds on the other end of the phone. I had already carved out a castle with my toes. How should I explain this? No matter how I said it, it would sound like I was a kidnapper. Xavier's manager's disbelieving voice rang out. Are you saying that teacher Sure's nephew used the access card, entered the password, passed the security guard's questioning, and went to your house? He was about to say more but was interrupted by Xavier. The man's clear voice was a little hoarse with fatigue. Shelley? Thank you, could I trouble you to bring him over? 6. Xavier had already been rained on during filming, and he'd spent hours in the wind looking for his nephew, so now he had a high fever. His manager, Joey, came to pick us up. When he saw the little boy eating obediently in my house, Joey's eyes almost popped out. Ronnie is actually so well behaved at your house. So his name was Ronnie. I had just made him a simple egg noodle soup, but he was eating it with gusto. When he saw Joey, Ronnie, who had been eating obediently, suddenly burst into tears. Joey skillfully took out a toy bear to cover his face, coaxing him softly. But no matter how he coaxed him, he wouldn't leave. Joey could only look at me in embarrassment. "Mission, could I trouble you to help take Ronnie back?" "Me? I've only met him for a few hours, I don't think he'll like me." Joey's eyes were too sincere, so I could only try to approach Ronnie. Unexpectedly, he reached out directly. "Auntie hug." Joey was shocked, he looked at me, then at Ronnie, who was giggling in my arms, with a look of enlightenment. I quickly waved my hand to explain, but Joey pushed me into the car. "It's okay, we won't pry into the private matters of our artists." I held Ronnie like I was holding a hot potato. He fell asleep as soon as he got in the car. The unique milky scent of a child filled my nose. He was clutching my hair, sleeping soundly, and didn't wake up until we got out of the car. I could only carry him all the way to Xavier's house. When we were in the elevator, several reporters brushed past us, and the flash went off behind us. Joey tried his best to shield us, and I lowered my head and carried Ronnie into the house. 7. Xavier was wearing home clothes and a mask, his eyes full of bloodshot. It seemed he hadn't slept well all night. He nodded at me to signal. "I'm sorry, you've really been a bother." I smiled and shook my head, put Ronnie on the bed, and wanted to get up, but my hair was tightly held in his hand. Xavier approached, held my hair, and gently pried Ronnie's hand open. His movements were gentle, his eyes focused and warm, and the small mole at the corner of his eye was very captivating, making it impossible for me to look away. "Okay." I didn't know how long I had been staring, but when I came back to my senses, Xavier's beautiful eyes were staring at me, his expression unreadable under the mask. Sorry, I probably haven't slept well and zoned out again." I took a step back, my face burning, and I opened my phone, talking nonsense. My cat is calling me home." As everyone knows, when people are embarrassed, they pretend to be very busy. But I didn't expect the phone to actually vibrate. I quickly walked out of the room, and Tessa's sharp scream almost pierced through the phone. "Shelly Yunmian. How do you have a child?" "Ah?" 8. I opened the trending searches. Hashtag Shelly Yunmian secretly married and had a child hashtag. Hashtag Shelly Yunmian, Xavier sure hashtag. Hashtag great, it's the sleepless CP, we're saved hashtag. Hashtag does the sleepless CP just not let people sleep, hashtag. My eyes went dark, and I subconsciously looked up at Xavier. He whispered a few words to Joey and looked at me apologetically. "You might have to stay here for a few days." Xavier took my phone. I don't know what he said to Tess, but when he gave me back my phone, Tessa's tone even sounded a little happy. "Shelly, why don't you stay with the movie star and learn for a few days? It's good that you don't have any work recently." She hung up before I could say anything. I looked at Xavier with a blank expression. He patiently explained that I had been photographed arriving at his house carrying the child, and reporters were camped out downstairs, so it could be troublesome if we were photographed again. As for the trending searches and news, his team would handle it. "I'm really sorry, I'll do my best to ensure you're not affected by this public opinion." As Xavier spoke, he coughed, his voice even hoarser. I remembered that he was still sick, yet he had been talking to me for so long. I nodded to show that it was okay, but then I suddenly remembered something. Won't your girlfriend mind?" "Girlfriend?" Xavier frowned. "I don't have a girlfriend." "So the jealous pot he mentioned? Could it be Ronnie?" An indescribable happiness spread through my heart, and the corners of my mouth went up like crazy. Even when I woke up the next day, I was still smiling. While I was still grinning foolishly, a little chubby hand slapped my face randomly, yelling, "Ah, ah." Opening my eyes, it was Ronnie, looking very anxious. "Auntie, Uncle is very hot." 9. I got out of bed and went downstairs to find Xavier, only to discover that he had a frighteningly high fever. I contacted Joey, but he was dealing with the media outside and couldn't come back right away. I rummaged through the house, but I couldn't find any antipyretic medicine. Seeing me in a panic, Ronnie burst into tears. I had to comfort him and find the medicine, and I was overwhelmed. Human cubs are such a hassle. A familiar voice sounded, and April jumped down from the windowsill and walked to Ronnie, who immediately stopped crying. "Human, the medicine is in the second drawer of the cabinet in Xavier's room." I didn't have time to think about how April knew where the medicine was. I quickly took it out and gave it to Xavier. He opened his mouth groggily, his tongue lightly licking the palm of my hand, and it's drilling straight into my heart. I helped him up to drink water, and he barely opened his eyes. "Thank you, Shelly." The pronunciation of these two words huba, was too similar to "thank you." I thought I must have misheard. Seeing him start to sweat, I breathed a sigh of relief. Just as I was about to turn around and leave, he groaned. "What's wrong?" I sat down on the bed and helped him sit up, leaning against my shoulder. Xavier's eyes, praised by countless directors for their coldness and nobility, now looked as wronged as a puppy, making people's hearts soften involuntarily. Headache. He replied in a muffled voice, as if he were acting spoiled. I felt his forehead temperature, and he grabbed my hand and placed it on his forehead. This feels good. I had never been so intimate with him, and my face felt a little hot, but I had no choice but to go along with it, using my hand to cool his forehead, cheeks, and neck. His hot Adam's apple rolled up and down in my palm, disturbing my mind a little. Fortunately, April had taken Ronnie out to play, otherwise, they would probably think I was sick too, seeing my face so red. Xavier still seemed uncomfortable. He grabbed my hand and continued to move it down, from his collarbone to his pectoral muscles. The firm, hot touch of his fingertips seemed to ignite me, and he even sighed comfortably, a tingling sensation instantly transmitting from my hand to my tailbone. He held my hand, and with the other hand, he hooked my neck. Perhaps subconsciously, he hooked my neck and leaned down, slowly approaching his face. Why did Xavier's lips get even redder when he had a fever, looking more and more tempting? I unconsciously held my breath and leaned in. 10. No. I couldn't take advantage of him in his vulnerable state. My sense of morality made me rein myself in. I jumped up almost instantly, covered him with the quilt, and fled the scene. After taking a quick shower, my face was still a little flushed. When I went out to the balcony for some air, I saw Ronnie grabbing April's tail and stuffing it into his mouth. You bold human cub. April skillfully wriggled out of his arms, licking her tail with a look of disdain. Ronnie pouted. I guessed he must be hungry, so I cooked him some lean meat porridge. After eating, Ronnie and April lay together in the sun, both of their bellies round and full, very enjoyable to pet. Auntie, when will you have a baby for me to play with? Ronnie's words were shocking. Before I could answer, April meowed. Little human, you have to ask your uncle. Ah, uncle, when are you going to let Auntie have a baby? Ronnie looked expectantly at me, behind me. I slowly turned my head. Xavier was holding a glass of water, a smile that wasn't quite a smile on his face. I didn't teach him to say that. I quickly cleared the relationship. Xavier's face was red, as if he had just broken his fever. He coughed lightly and turned his eyes to April with some surprise. Pearl? You're finally home. Pearl? I looked at Xavier, then at April. April stretched lazily and went to rub against Xavier's legs. She wouldn't be that little cat that gave you flowers, would she? I nodded, and he seemed to laugh out of anger. No wonder the flowers I planted at home were falling so fast. And the butterfly specimens I just took photos of mysteriously disappeared a couple of days ago. April rolled around on the ground brazenly. On the contrary, I felt a little guilty. Human, this is this cat's territory, you don't have to be afraid. She meowed a couple of times, arrogantly snagging Xavier's pants. Xavier picked her up in annoyance and touched her belly. You had your kittens? I'll get you spayed after the public opinion dies down. I can't let you be taken out by tomcats to mess around anymore. April struggled out of his arms and glanced at him sideways. Human, you don't understand how charming Zongbiao is. We are truly in love. Xavier didn't seem to understand April's words. He picked up the cat again and teased Ronnie with it, making him giggle. Looking at Xavier making faces, I felt an inexplicable warmth in my heart. This was the Xavier I first knew, the real him. 11. I started chasing celebrities when I was 16, and the one I chased was Xavier. At that time, he was only 19 years old and not yet a famous movie star. He was just a small name in a singing and dancing group. Those years, boy idol groups were very popular, and Xavier's group happened to catch the trend. But there were too many people in the group, and everyone's attention was focused on the lead singer and lead dancer. Not many people were Xavier's fans. At every autograph session, the space in front of Xavier was always the emptiest. But he was never awkward and always looked at his teammates with a smile as they signed away. Look how considerate my fans are, they don't want my hand to get sore. He was good at self-deprecating and very optimistic, like a happy little son. As a teenager, I was sensitive and dim, trapped in the brokenness of my parents' divorce and caught in the gossip of others. Even chasing celebrities was done secretly and carefully. Even though I went to many autograph sessions, I never dared to stand in front of Xavier. The time their group was rumored to be disbanding, I still only dared to hold the notebook in my hand and look at him from afar. When his eyes met mine, the burning sense of inferiority forced me to lower my head. Hi, can I sign for you? His voice was smiling, resounding above my head, as if the sunlight had suddenly pushed aside the dark clouds, directly illuminating me. When I looked up, the teenager's eyes reflected my bewildered, apprehensive, and dim face. He took the notebook in my hand and smiled in surprise when he saw the cover. Wow, your cover is me. Can I sign it? I nodded, watching him take out a marker and write and draw seriously in the notebook. I felt an unreal sense of great happiness. The fans in the long line next door looked at our unconventional way of chasing celebrities with surprise, and the envy on their faces gave me a long-lost sense of pride. Okay. Xavier handed me the notebook and then picked up my phone naturally, opening the camera. With a click, the bright and handsome teenager made a chinibu gesture to the camera, and the girl next to him looked at the teenager in surprise, the corners of her mouth rising in an uncontainable arc. You're welcome. Xavier smiled and returned the phone to me. The notebook in my arms was open, and written on it in a flamboyant script was, "Don't be afraid, please be brave and move forward." He turned around and walked back to the stage. I suddenly stopped him, and at the moment I called out, I realized that I hadn't thought about what to say at all. I will try to get to your side. My voice was choked with sobs as I spoke, and a strong sense of bitterness surged up, and tears fell along with it. Those thousands of feelings that were churning restlessly during puberty suddenly erupted. Xavier turned around and mouthed a word to me with a smile. Add oil. Later, for this goal, I entered the entertainment industry, striving to be someone who could sit in the same row as him at the awards ceremony. But Xavier had floated and sunk in the entertainment industry for many years, and the youthful flamboyance and spirit had been restrained into a distant smile with pursed lips. Everyone called the iceberg movie star Xavier cold and mature, a abstinent male god. But I always missed that carefree, cheerful, and optimistic small-time celebrity from before. 12. After Xavier recovered from his illness, he started cooking for us. I was a little embarrassed at first, but after eating it once, I couldn't refuse. It was so delicious. He saw me finish my second bowl, and his eyes smiled brightly. I blushed a little and silently suppressed the thought of having another bowl. But Xavier naturally took my bowl and filled it again. He always seemed to be able to see what I was thinking. Human, do you like my little brother? April's voice suddenly sounded, and I almost choked on my food. Ronnie considerately patted my back, looking concerned. I was just a little touched when I heard his childish voice. Auntie, are you pregnant? On TV, pregnancy is always discovered while eating. No, Auntie isn't preg. No, I'm not Auntie. I was about to cry, and Xavier's laughter came from beside me. Eat properly, don't disturb Auntie. Why was even the movie star like this? I ate my rice angrily, occasionally glancing up to admire Xavier's beauty, but found that the smile on his face disappeared after looking at his phone. Could it be that there was more bad news from the media? I guessed randomly and opened my phone, seeing trending on the hot search. Hashtag Xavier Shea, Shelly Union hashtag. 13. Xavier Shea is the son of my mom's best friend. We grew up together. He's a typical rich second generation, silly, rich, and lovesick. The tears he shed for love could save the Sahara Desert. Seeing him appear on the hot search with me, I knew something bad was bound to happen. Clicking in, there he was, wearing sunglasses, looking cool as he faced the media. Yes, that's my child. Shelly Union just wants to be a stepmother to the child. She's liked me for many years, so she came to my neighborhood late at night with the child. As reporters investigated and found that Xavier Shea did live in this building, the fans of the Sleepless CP were heartbroken. Heartbroken, I thought our old Xavier finally understood how to get his hands on a good woman. Boo-hoo, Shelly Union must be our sister-in-law. So much for childhood sweethearts beating love at first sight. I glanced at Xavier, whose expression was getting gloomier, and wanted to sneak upstairs to call and scold Xavier Shea. The heat had almost died down these past few days, and Xavier's team had spent a lot of money to lower the trending topics, but he stirred things up again. The doorbell suddenly rang. Xavier opened the monitor, and Xavier Shea was outside the door, his eyes red as he cursed. Quickly hand over my Shelly. Don't think you can hide at home and not say anything. I've already gone to her house and contacted her manager, and they won't tell me where she went. I know, you must have been in love before, but then you became a movie star, and she could only follow behind you, a third-rate little star. It's wrong of her to have a child without your permission, but you can't illegally imprison her like this. How about this, the child can be mine, and you let Shelly go. Xavier watched the monitor with his arms folded, his expression unreadable, but my intuition told me that he was angry. I rubbed my throbbing forehead and pressed the intercom button on the monitor. Xavier Shea, the most important thing for you to do right now is to uninstall the Tomato Novel app on your phone. 14. Xavier Shea and I sat on the sofa. Xavier handed Ronnie to me and stayed in his room, giving us private space very considerately. Ronnie glared at Xavier Shea. Don't you dare steal my auntie. April also gave Xavier Shea a meow meow punch. Xavier Shea was very wronged. How would I know that things would go this wrong? I thought the novel had come to life. I couldn't help but kick him. Thank you, you're so selfless, saying that I want to be a stepmother to your child. I just don't understand, aren't you on vacation with your girlfriend abroad? How do you have time to pay attention to me? Was it just my imagination, or did I hear the sound of a door closing? Xavier Shea took off his sunglasses, his eyes filled with tears. Shelley, she doesn't want me anymore. She said that she realized her heart was actually with her ex-boyfriend after being with me. I quickly stopped him. So, he was just heartbroken and came to me for comfort again. Xavier Shea wiped his tears on his own. Shelley, I'm tired. I'm thinking, why don't I just listen to my mom and we get married? No way. Two voices, one big and one small, sounded at the same time. The small one was Ronnie, and the big one. I turned my head, and Xavier had opened the door at some point, his face as dark as ice. He noticed my surprised gaze and cleared his throat. What I mean is, you have to have love to get married. Xavier Shea, if you're a man, don't be afraid of getting hurt in love. Xavier Shea looked excited to have found a kindred spirit. The person who had been so wary before now couldn't wait to become Xavier's sworn brother. I looked at Xavier's slightly red earlobes, and a bold thought rose from the bottom of my heart. Impossible, stop dreaming, you haven't known each other for long. I admonished myself, but I couldn't help but feel a little greedily happy. April jumped onto my lap, staring at me with her amber eyes. Human, you haven't answered yet. Do you like the cat's little brother? 15. I carried April to the balcony. The warm sunlight shone on me, and I gently stroked April's chin. She closed her eyes comfortably. Yes, I like Xavier very much. My voice was scattered in the wind. April twitched her ears, I didn't know if she heard me. 10 years of pursuit was enough for me to distinguish between admiration and liking. Perhaps before entering the industry, I saw him more as a distant lighthouse at sea. But after entering the industry, he became very close to me. Whether it was through the mouths of the people around me or through the countless reposts during the promotion of his new drama, I could always glimpse his gentle and kind figure. I lied about one thing. Actually, I had met Xavier before the awards ceremony. But he didn't know it was me. At that time, I had just started out in the industry, and I had all kinds of realistic scars painted on my face for the role. When I looked in the mirror, I could hardly recognize myself. The filming ended early, and everyone packed up quickly. I couldn't find anyone to help me remove the makeup, so I had to walk back with this face. It was already late at night, and the few passers-by who saw me all avoided me from afar. Even taxi drivers didn't dare to pick me up. Snow was falling softly. I looked at the 7 kilometers left on the navigation and suddenly felt a little desperate. As I squatted by the roadside crying with my arms folded, a nanny van stopped beside me. The cold on my body suddenly stopped increasing. I looked up, and it was Xavier holding an umbrella for me. In the overlapping and chaotic timelines, he walked straight to me in my most helpless moment, just like he did when he was 19 years old. As if he were my own private god. When I got into his car, Joey scolded him softly in disapproval. Xavier laughed softly. It's okay, I might not be a star in the future anyway. Why? Almost subconsciously, I opened my mouth. Xavier looked at me in surprise and didn't answer, just smiled faintly. I immediately realized that I had said the wrong thing. At that time, he had just transitioned from idol to actor and was ridiculed for his poor acting skills. Some haters even encouraged him to retire from the industry as soon as possible. I'm your fan. There are many people who support you. Don't give up on your dream. Please be brave and move forward. I didn't know how to comfort him, so I could only use the words he had used to encourage me before. The 7-kilometer distance was not too far. I arrived as soon as I finished speaking. The car door opened, his face hanging in the shadows, and he didn't respond. I thanked him softly and got out of the car. Xavier's voice suddenly sounded behind me. Okay, I'll add oil. I looked back, and he smiled as he always had, waving goodbye to me. My heart danced with the flying snow, and I suddenly realized that I had an inappropriate selfishness toward my god. 16. Xavier didn't know what he said, but Xavier Shea dispelled the gloom he had when he came and went back happily. He didn't even say goodbye to me. He took the initiative to clarify the news, but he didn't forget to add his own hidden agenda and put out a marriage advertisement for himself. Xavier's team finally removed all the hot searches and issued a statement, saying that I just happened to meet his nephew and help take the child home. The last reason for me to stay at Xavier's house was gone. On the night before I packed my things and went home, Tess sent me a new script and asked me to familiarize myself with it. Thinking about leaving this place, I had some insomnia, so I simply got up and practiced my lines. Before long, Xavier's voice sounded outside the door. Is it convenient for me to come in? I quickly opened the door, and his eyes fell on the script in my hand. Practicing for your new play? Do you need my help? I wanted to refuse, but thinking that this was the last night, and I didn't know if I would have a chance to be with him in the future, I nodded like a ghost. It was only after starting the scene that I realized it was a little awkward. My role was the second female lead, an arrogant and domineering princess. And the role that Xavier was playing with me now was the male favorite raised by the princess. I took a deep breath and kicked Xavier, who was squatting in front of me, lightly according to the script. But the slippers uncooperatively fell to the ground. I can't be distracted, this is acting with a movie star. I continued to recite my lines. Zhao Rogwan, what do you think you are? You're just a plaything of this princess. Xavier was worthy of being a movie star, and he got into the role in a second, the corners of his eyes turning red. What if you're a princess? Aren't you at my mercy in bed? As he spoke, he grabbed my foot and pressed it to his chest. Xavier's shirt was unbuttoned, and the sole of my foot came into contact with his bare chest, which was burning hot. I suddenly curled my toes, and heat rose from my neck to my face. Outrageous. How dare you be disrespectful to this princess? I looked at the next scene in the script, where the male favorite smelled all the way up the princess's foot, smelling the princess's neck. What the hell, is this a serious drama? 17. Before I could react, Xavier's breath was on my neck. It seemed that he had automatically omitted the more offensive parts of the scene. But his eyes didn't look like they hated me as the script said. Instead, they wandered shyly. Well, that must be the movie star's own understanding and performance. As a princess, yet you forced an innocent young man to become your male favorite. Who is the bold one? Xavier raised his eyes to look at me. We were extremely close, and my eyes involuntarily fell on his Adam's apple, which was moving up and down. Shelly Yunyan, be professional. I looked away and focused my mind, continuing to recite my lines. I just like you. What's wrong with that? The next line he should coldly glare at me and say, but I've never liked you. But Xavier's face was getting redder and redder, and the knuckles of his fingers on the chair were turning white. He seemed nervous? He closed his eyes and slowly opened his mouth. What a coincidence, I like you too. You said it wrong. I stammered and pointed out his mistake, but he seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and threw the script aside. Sorry, I forgot the lines. My wildly beating heart gradually calmed down as he stood up. How embarrassing, I've acted so many times, yet I still couldn't control my emotions. So I can only tell the truth. Xavier's voice sounded, and I suddenly looked up, running into his smiling eyes. What? I felt dizzy with the great surprise. Xavier leaned down and pointed to the script in my hand. It's time for the next scene, can we? The next scene, above, said that the princess was embarrassed and angry and hugged the neck of the male favorite and kissed him strongly. I nodded in a daze. The next second, Xavier held my head, and his cold, soft lips pressed against mine. 18. The next day, I was still surrounded by a huge sense of unreality. Ronnie hugged my leg, crying and not letting me go. Xavier gently picked him up and smiled to comfort him. Don't worry, Auntie will come often in the future. His bright eyes burned my whole body, and I just wanted to escape quickly. Ronnie was still tugging on my clothes, confirming with a wronged expression. Really? I touched Ronnie's little head and nodded vigorously. April was sitting calmly. Human, I'll continue to see you tomorrow. Looking at the flowers at Xavier's house that had been plucked bald, I silently held back my laughter. Xavier sent me downstairs, holding my hand with one hand and pulling my suitcase with the other, not caring about anyone else. On the contrary, I was a little uneasy, always looking left and right. After walking a few steps, he stopped somewhat aggrieved. Does Shelley want to have a secret relationship with me? It's not, I have to adjust. I've liked him for so many years, and I never thought that this feeling would be reciprocated. It's like someone reaching for the moon in the water, suddenly actually reaching the moon. After the great surprise, there was a full heart of unease. Am I really worthy of him? Does he like the real me? Countless questions were running around in my mind. Xavier cupped my face in his hands, his tone serious. Shelley Yunmian, I've liked you, not starting from yesterday or today. 19. Perhaps you don't remember, but you went to my autograph session 53 times 10 years ago, and you spent a total of 782 yuan buying my albums and merchandise. Actually, I was in a bad state at that time. I thought about quitting the group, but every time I saw you carrying such a big school bag, piecing together money to buy albums, I would tell myself, hold on, because someone believes in your dreams more than you do. The time our group was about to disband, you still didn't dare to come for an autograph, so I couldn't help but take the initiative to sign for you. You were crying very hard at the time, saying that you wanted to get to my side. I originally planned to retire from the industry after the disbandment, but because of that sentence, I couldn't help but be curious when you would get to my side. I stared blankly at him, and it was only when my face felt cold that I realized that tears had fallen without me knowing. So in those days when I took him as my light, he had also been watching me. Xavier hugged me into his arms, complaining with a slightly nasal tone. At that awards ceremony, you walked past me, so polite and distant, and I thought you had forgotten about me and didn't like me anymore. I originally wanted to slowly develop a relationship with you, but then Xavier's shape popped up, but fortunately, it let me hear you say you liked Xavier." Xavier sighed contentedly. So that day, he heard what I said on the balcony. 20. Xavier announced the relationship at the first opportunity. The sleepless CP fans shouted that it was like celebrating the new year. I knew my ship was real, boo-hoo. The most sought-after sister-in-law in the entertainment industry still fell into old Xavier's hands. Who would have thought that our niche CP could have this day? Hands on hips. I was at home framing the gifts that April gave me into an album when there was a knock on the door. Opening the door, April was still elegantly licking her paws. "Human, I'll give you my little brother." Xavier stood beside April, smiling brightly. I posted the framed cat gifts online, and my fans praised me for being artistic. Xavier also commented at the first opportunity. "Human, the cat will always protect you in the future." Everyone replied under this comment, saying that Xavier was showing off his love like crazy. And Xavier, who was sitting next to me, looked blank when he saw the comments. "Ronnie has already been taken home by his parents," who posted that. I turned my head to look at April, who was purring and eating on Xavier, and she winked at me. "Human, cats know many skills, don't admire cats." I burst out laughing. A low meow sounded outside the door, and April suddenly stopped, raising her tail high and running out. "Human, I'm going to find Zongbiao, goodbye." Extra, April, Pearl. I am the top cat in the capital circle, Pearl. The entire capital city is my territory. I took in a little brother, Xavier, and reluctantly helped him guard the territory. He is a big star in the human world. How big exactly? Maybe as big as all the cat food cans piled up in the warehouse. Everyone online says he's cold, unapproachable, and an abstinent iceberg. Cats don't understand why icebergs have to be abstinent. But I clearly saw him holding his face and watching several TV shows over and over again every day, like a puppy. Over time, I discovered a pattern. He only watched segments with one beautiful human. The cat found her name in the cast list, Shelly Yunmian. Her eyes are like crescent moons, and she smiles like a cat. The cat likes her too. But my little brother doesn't know how to talk to her at all. He even has to use his manager's phone to add her on WeChat, and he has to find an excuse to introduce a director to her. The cat is already pregnant, and my little brother hasn't even spoken to her yet. I couldn't stand watching it, so I simply went to Shelly Yunmian's house, in her neighborhood. The place where humans live is too complicated. I can't find out exactly where she lives. Fortunately, she is kind-hearted and often feeds stray cats in the neighborhood, making me gain 3 or 4 pounds. I have always been grateful, so I followed her a few times and went to her house to give her some small gifts. Just consider it as doing favors for my little brother. But she doesn't like my mice and birds. She's so scared that she's about to cry, but she still can't bear to hurt my heart, so she puts on a brave face and sweeps them into her house. Humph, stupid human, but the cat likes her. Xavier has recently been fond of growing flowers, and he bought several pots of flowers that are said to be very expensive. So I pull a few branches from the balcony every day to give to Shelly Yunmian. This time, she is very happy, touching my head and thanking me happily. She posts the gifts I gave her online, showing off cutely. Xavier just looks at it over and over again, without even liking it. What strange humans. I logged directly into his account. Human, as long as you like them. See, the story starts when you take the initiative.